This story is titled, I Recorded My Fiancé Planning to Destroy My Life After Our Wedding. Her face, when I exposed her gold-digging scheme, was priceless. So, I've got to tell you guys about the biggest mind-blower of my life. I'm Ethan, a 30-year-old male, and I run this landscaping business I started from scratch about 6 years ago. We're doing pretty well, got a couple of crews, some decent commercial contracts, and we're known as the go-to guys for those fancy backyard renovations in the nicer parts of town. Until 3 weeks ago, I was engaged to Sarah, a 29-year-old female. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 1, and the wedding was supposed to be next weekend. Yeah, was. When we first got together, Sarah seemed perfect, smart, funny, supportive of my business. You know how it goes. She was working at this marketing firm, making decent money, but always showed interest in what I was doing. Looking back, maybe too much interest, but you don't see that when you're in love. Her older sister, Claire, is divorced and got a huge settlement from her ex-husband, who owned some construction company. Ever since we got engaged, Claire was always around, giving Sarah advice about marriage. I didn't think much of it at first, just thought she was being protective of her little sis. You need to understand his business before you marry him, Sarah. Make sure your name is on everything, Sarah. Don't let him keep you in the dark about finances, Sarah. This kind of stuff was said right in front of me, covered up as a joke, which I guess should have been a red flag, but I figured, whatever. That's just Claire being bitter about her own failed marriage. Sarah would always laugh it off when I mentioned how annoying Claire was. About 6 months ago, Sarah started asking more detailed questions about my business. How much were specific contracts worth? What was our profit margin? What were my expansion plans? At first, I brushed it off, thought it was cool that she wanted to know more about my business. But after a while, it didn't feel like curiosity, it felt like an interview. Every question started to sound less like I care and more like, what's in it for me? It's hard to explain, but the way she'd press me for numbers, contracts, future plans, it felt transactional, not intimate. It made me feel more like a target than a fiancé, but I shoved that thought down. You tell yourself you're just being paranoid, that it's just pre-wedding stress, right? Then she started pushing about the prenup. My buddy, who's also my lawyer, Mike, suggested we get one since I had the business before we met. Sarah kept saying she just wanted to understand it better before signing. I told her Mike was still finalizing it. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. I was working late in my home office. Sarah thought I'd left for a meeting with a potential big client, but they rescheduled last minute. She had her college friends over, including Claire. They were hanging out in the living room, getting louder as the night went on. I was wrapping up some estimates when I heard my name through the door. Ethan has no idea what's coming after the wedding, Sarah said, her voice slurring a bit. Something in her tone made me freeze. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I opened my voice recorder app and just listened through the door. The prenup is garbage, she continued. Claire found me this attorney who spotted 3 different ways around it. After the wedding, we'll take everything he has. Why is he even bothering with a prenup? One of her friends asked. He thinks he's protecting both of us, Sarah laughed. This cold sound I'd never heard from her before. But Claire taught me how this works. I've been documenting emotional abuses for months, all made up, obviously. But who's going to question a crying woman? I felt dizzy hearing them discuss their plan in detail, how Sarah would gradually get her name on my business assets after the wedding, how she'd been slowly isolating me from friends who might interfere, how she'd waited until my company hit a specific valuation before pushing for marriage. After the wedding, we'll take everything he has, she laughed. The house, the business, everything. Then I'll move to Tampa like Claire did after her divorce. She got half of everything plus alimony. Learned from the best, Claire chimed in. Men are so stupid when they're in love. I recorded everything, almost 45 minutes of them discussing their plans. When they finally left, I waited in my office until Sarah went to bed. Then I quietly packed some clothes, grabbed my important documents, and checked into a Motel 6 across town that night. After hearing her say those words, something in me just snapped. It was like a light switch flipped, and whatever love or connection I thought I had for her just shut off, cold. I didn't feel betrayed as much as I felt numb, like she'd reached inside and pulled something out of me, and now it was just gone. I wasn't Ethan, her fiancé, anymore. I was just some guy she was waiting to destroy. And from that moment, I stopped looking at her like the woman I loved. I started seeing her as a stranger who'd been living in my house, in my life, pretending. First thing in the morning, I called Mike and sent him the recording. "Holy hell, Ethan," he said after listening. "Don't go home. Don't confront her. We need to handle this very carefully." "What do I do?" I asked, still in shock. "First, act normal. Don't let her know you know anything. Second, we need more evidence. The recording is good, but we should build a stronger case." So that's what I did. I texted Sarah that I'd landed a big emergency commercial project out of town and would be gone for 2 weeks. "That's great, babe," she texted back. "Don't worry about any wedding stuff. I've got it handled. Just focus on landing that contract." Reading that text, knowing what I now knew, made me want to throw up. 3 years together, and I had no idea who this person really was. So here I am in this shitty motel room, trying to figure out how my life turned into this nightmare. Mike's helping me plan next steps, and I'm playing along with all Sarah's wedding texts and calls. "Miss you, babe. Can't wait for our big day," she texted last night. "Miss you too." "Not much longer now," I replied, wondering how I never noticed how fake she sounded before. $43,000 self-wedding deposits that are mostly non-refundable at this point, all our friends and family flying in next week, everything planned down to the last detail, and me sitting here in a motel room planning how to blow it all up in the most devastating way possible. Because if there's one thing I've learned in building my business from nothing, it's this: nobody messes with what I've built. Nobody. Anyway, I'll update when I have more to share because right now, my mind's going a million miles an hour. Update 1. First, thanks for all the comments and support on my last post. Some of you guys are savage with the revenge suggestions, but I appreciate the sentiment. So, it's been about a week since I discovered my fiancée Sarah was planning to screw me over after our wedding. I'm still living out of this crappy motel with paper-thin walls and a mattress that feels like it's stuffed with Legos. The couple next door either really loves each other or is filming amateur porn. Either way, sleep is hard to come by. Every night, I've been lying awake, replaying our entire relationship in my head, trying to spot the warning signs I missed. There were so many: how she always steered conversations away from her past relationships, how she gradually suggested I spend less time with certain friends, how she'd casually drop comments about other business owners. She knew who had smart wives who helped run things. I was so blind, but I've been playing everything cool with Sarah. I call her every night, telling her how the emergency project is going and asking about wedding details. She's so excited, telling me about flower arrangements and DJ playlists, while I'm sitting here knowing it's all a lie. It's like watching someone dig their own grave while they think they're building a swimming pool. "The wedding's going to be perfect," she said last night. "My dress fitting went great, and Claire helped me pick out the perfect shoes." Ah, yes, Claire, the divorced sister who's been coaching Sarah on how to fleece me. After that first night, I started doing some digging on my own. Turns out, Claire didn't just get divorced, she systematically destroyed her ex-husband's construction business. The dude had to file for bankruptcy and move back in with his parents at 42. She got the house, half his future earnings, and somehow even got ownership of a vacation cabin his parents had given him before they even met. The guy was so broken, he didn't even fight it. I got all this info after I spent hours going through old social media, finding mutual friends who knew both of them, even tracked down a couple of news articles about the bankruptcy. The more I looked, the more the pattern became clear. Claire wasn't just a bitter divorcee. She was a predator who'd found her next target through her sister. But then I started looking deeper into Sarah's past. Remember, I'm stuck in this motel with nothing but time and a burning need to understand how badly I'd been played. I called up some old mutual friends, claiming I was working on a wedding surprise and needed stories about Sarah's past relationships for a video montage. What I learned made me physically sick. This wasn't Sarah's first rodeo. Her college boyfriend had a trust fund she tried to get access to. Then there was some restaurant owner she dated for a year. Neither had as much money as me, so she bailed when they caught on to her games. The worst part was realizing I never really knew her at all. I spent an entire day just sitting on that shitty motel bed, wondering if I was crazy. Maybe I misunderstood the conversation. Maybe I was overreacting. But every time those doubts crept in, I'd play the recording again, her cold laugh. After the wedding, we'll take everything he has. I almost broke down and confronted her 3 times, almost drove back to our house in the middle of the night to wake her up and scream at her for betraying me. But each time, I reminded myself that's exactly what she'd want me looking like, the unstable, angry one, evidence of her made-up emotional abuse. So instead, I got smarter. I remembered our home has a security system with cameras that record audio. I logged into it remotely and started watching the clips from the past week. And there it was, Sarah and Claire in our living room, going through details of their plan. Once you're officially married, it doesn't matter what he wants, Claire told her. The courts favor wives, especially if there's documentation of mistreatment. I just hope he doesn't back out of adding me to the business, Sarah replied. That's where the real money is. He won't, Claire said. Men like him are predictable. They think with their thing and their ego. Just keep stroking both, and you'll be fine. Hearing them talk about me like I'm some easy mark has actually helped with the pain. At first, I was devastated. 3 years of my life with someone who was just playing me. Now I'm just angry and motivated. The next step was harder. I had to get into her laptop. When we talked on the phone, I casually mentioned having left some work files on our home desktop that I needed. Could she please email them to me? While she was doing that, I remoted into the desktop using my admin credentials and installed a keylogger. 2 days later, I had her passwords. I logged into her email, her cloud storage, everything. And there it all was, a document titled Ethan's Abuse Journal with made-up entries going back 18 months. Stuff like, Ethan yelled at me today when I asked about business finances. Said, it's not my concern and I wouldn't understand anyway. Felt very belittled and scared. Ethan got angry when dinner wasn't ready, slammed the door, and gave me the silent treatment all night. Ethan controlled what I wore to his business party, said my dress was too revealing and made me change. None of this ever happened. I've never yelled at her, never given her the silent treatment, never told her what to wear. I cook most of our meals because I'm actually decent at it, and she burns water. I also found emails between her and Claire going back 2 years. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment idea. They'd been planning this since before I even proposed. Claire had literally been giving her a step-by-step playbook. First year of marriage, just be perfect, one email said. Second year, start documenting emotional abuse. Anything can be twisted if you write it down consistently. By year 3, you should have your name on everything. Then, boom, file when he least expects it. Another gem from Claire. Men are simple. Regular sex and admiration will get you anything you want from them. Just make him think it's his idea to add you to the business accounts. The final piece of evidence came when I found her banking records. She's been stashing money in a secret account, about $155,000 so far. Money that's come from our joint account that I mostly fund. All of this while wedding plans continue. Sarah's been sending me photos of decorations, asking my opinion on cake flavors, confirming with vendors. Only 10 more days until I'm Miss S. Carter, she texted this morning with a bunch of heart emojis. Yeah, about that. Mike and I have been putting together a plan. At first, I wanted to just ghost her, disappear, and let her figure it out when I didn't show up at the altar. But Mike pointed out that would just make me look like the bad guy to everyone who doesn't know the truth. Plus, Sarah might try to spin it as emotional distress and still come after my assets, so we're planning to go with a different approach. There are moments when I still can't believe this is happening, moments when I remember how happy I thought we were, and I start to doubt myself again. But then I look at all the evidence I've gathered, and I know I'm doing the right thing. I'm heading back home tomorrow, pretending the emergency project is completed. Sarah's planning a special dinner to welcome me back. Little does she know I've got my own special plans for her in about a week. The hardest part is going to be acting normal when I see her kissing her, sleeping next to her, talking about our future, all while knowing she's a snake. But I can play this game too. For 9 more days, I'll be the perfect, loving fiancé. I've accepted that I'm out the $43,000 in deposits worth every penny to avoid being legally tied to this person. My business, which I've put my heart and soul into for 6 years, is safe. That's what matters. I'll update after I get home and start the final countdown. Wish me luck, it's going to be the performance of my life. Edit. For those asking for more details on the evidence, I have the original recording, screenshots of their emails, texts, plans, the fake abuse journal, financial records of the secret account, and security footage. Mike says it's more than enough to not only stop the wedding but also potentially pursue legal action for the attempted fraud. Update 2. Holy hell, guys, it happened. I'm writing this from my new apartment, still processing everything, but I promised an update. So here goes. I got home from my emergency project last week, and Sarah threw herself at me the minute. I walked through the door hugging me, kissing me, telling me how much she missed me. It was surreal, like watching a movie where someone is wearing a Sarah mask. All I could think about was the recording of her laughing, about taking everything I'd built. The week leading up to the wedding was the hardest thing I've ever had to fake my way through final cake tastings, picking up our rings, confirming last-minute details. Sarah kept making these comments that now had completely different meanings to me. "I can't wait to help you grow the business," she'd say, while we were looking at honeymoon pictures on her laptop. "We should look at putting my name on the house deed after we get back from Hawaii," she mentioned casually over dinner. Each time, I'd just nod and say, "Sure, we can look into that," while mentally adding it to my evidence list. But there were moments when keeping it together felt like holding back a storm, like when she pulled out some surprise gift for our honeymoon, matching beach hats with Mr. and Mrs. Carter stitched on them. I had to walk off, lock myself in the bathroom, and stare at the wall until the urge to call her out passed. I was furious. The level of disrespect was insane. She was smiling, playing house, while plotting to burn it all down behind my back. It took everything in me not to walk out and end it right there, but I don't swing wild. I strike when it counts. Claire was around constantly, helping with wedding stuff, but really checking to make sure their plan was on track. She'd ask these probing questions disguised as normal conversation. "Ethan, have you finalized that prenup yet? Just want to make sure Sarah's protected." Translation, is our plan to get around it still good? You must be so excited to have Sarah's marketing expertise help with your business. What she actually meant, "You're about to lose half your company, dumbass." I just smiled and nodded through all of it. Meanwhile, Mike and I were finalizing our counterattack. Fast forward to last night, the rehearsal dinner. We had it at this fancy steakhouse downtown, both families. The wedding party, close friends, about 50 people total. Sarah was in her element, accepting congratulations, playing the blushing bride perfectly. Her parents were beaming. They had no clue what their daughters were planning. At least I don't think they did. Standing next to Sarah, listening to her laugh with her friends, watching her talk about our future, I felt like a ghost, like I didn't even exist in her world anymore. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the idea of me, the idiot who'd marry her and hand over my life. I looked at her and thought, I don't know this person. I wasn't nervous about the confrontation. I was relieved because after tonight, I'd finally be free of pretending to love someone who never existed in the first place. Claire kept giving me these smug looks all night, like she was already counting my money. If she only knew what was about to go down. After dinner, during the toasts, Sarah's dad stood up and gave this emotional speech about welcoming me to the family, how he was giving his little girl to a good man, all that sentimental stuff. I actually felt bad for him in that moment. When the toast wrapped up, Sarah was by my side, smiling like everything was perfect. I turned to her parents and said quietly, "I need to speak with you both. It's important." Sarah's smile faltered. "What's going on?" she asked, looking concerned. "Just come with me," I said, keeping my voice calm. She didn't argue. Her parents exchanged a glance and followed. Claire hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but she didn't really have a choice. Refusing would have looked suspicious. Once the door closed, Mike slipped in behind us. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, seeing my lawyer there. "What's going on, Ethan?" her dad asked. "Is everything okay?" "No, actually, it's not," I said. "I think you all should hear this." I pulled out my phone and played the recording on high volume. The color drained from Sarah's face as her own voice filled the room. "After the wedding, we'll take everything he has, the house, the business, everything." I watched her face change from confusion to complete horror as she realized what was playing. Her parents looked shocked. Claire's eyes darted around like she was planning an escape. When the recording finished, I played a few choice bits of their conversations from the home security system. Then I showed screenshots of Sarah's fake abuse journal entries, followed by the emails between her and Claire, and finally, the bank statements showing the money Sarah had been secretly moving. Total silence when I finished. Sarah's mom had tears running down her face. Her dad looked like he was having trouble processing what he'd just heard. Claire was staring at the floor. "The wedding is off," I said calmly. "Obviously." Sarah lunged at me, trying to grab my phone. "You recorded me?" "That's illegal!" Mike stepped forward. "Actually, in our state, recording conversations you're a party to is completely legal. Also, your home security system is registered in both your names. I'd advise against any physical altercations, Miss Taylor." "The worst part," I said, looking at Sarah, who was still in shock, "is that I actually believed you loved me until 3 weeks ago." Her dad finally found his voice. "There must be some explanation. Sarah wouldn't do this. I handed him copies of everything. She did do this. It's all here. Maybe ask Claire about her divorce while you're at it." "This is all being taken out of context," Claire started, but her dad cut her off. "Be quiet. I've heard enough from you." Then his whole demeanor changed. "There must be an explanation," he told me. I just handed him the copies. He looked at it for about 10 seconds before laughing and tossing the papers on the table. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Ethan?" His voice went cold. "I know what's going on in the world right now. All this so-called evidence, the recordings, the screenshots, this journal, it's all fabricated. AI can make anyone say anything these days." I just stared at him, not believing what I was hearing. "My daughter would never do this. This is some sick attempt to get out of the wedding, and you're using fake evidence to do it." He jabbed a finger at me. "Let me make something very clear. If you cancel this wedding, I will make it my personal mission to destroy your landscaping business. I have connections with half the commercial property owners in this town." Sarah had stopped crying, looking between her dad and me. Mike stepped forward. "Mr. Taylor, I can assure you save it," he interrupted. "I don't know what this kid is paying you, but we can beat it. This is defamation, plain and simple. The wedding is already canceled," I said firmly, finding my voice again. "I've already contacted the venue and major vendors as of this afternoon. I'm not seeking any refunds or reimbursements. Consider my half of the costs, the price of finding out who Sarah really is before it was too late." "You're making a huge mistake," he growled. "My lawyers will bury you." Sarah was back to crying again, that ugly kind of sobbing where you can't even speak properly. "Please don't do this," she stammered. "I made a mistake." "No, Sarah," I said. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a calculated plan to defraud me and destroy my life's work. There's a difference. Don't walk away from my daughter, her dad shouted as I turned to leave. You have no idea who you're messing with. Sarah grabbed my arm. You can't just walk away. Where are you going? We need to talk about this. I yanked my arm free. I don't live there anymore. I moved my things out while you were at your final dress fitting yesterday. The look on her face when she realized I'd been playing her all week? Priceless. This isn't over, her dad warned as I walked out. Not by a long shot. I left them in that room. I didn't address the other guests, just got in my car and drove to my new apartment, the one I'd rented 2 weeks ago. My phone blew up immediately. Sarah called 28 times in the first hour. Her dad sent threats. Her friends, my family all trying to figure out what happened. I only answered my parents, who'd flown in for the wedding. Gave them the short version. Mom cried. Dad just asked if I was sure about the evidence. When I explained what I had, he went quiet, then said, I'll handle the relatives. You take care of yourself. So here I am in my new apartment. Wedding day officially canceled. $43,000 down the drain, but honestly, the best money I ever spent. The weirdest part? I don't even feel that sad, just relieved, like I was carrying this weight for 3 years and didn't even know it until it was gone. Though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about her dad making good on his threats. The guy has some serious connections in this town. I'll update if anything else significant happens, but for now, I'm just going to have me some dinner and get some sleep in a bed that doesn't have a liar next to it. Edit. For those asking if I'm worried about defamation claims, no. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and I have mountains of evidence. Also, I was careful to only show the evidence to her immediate family, not blast it publicly. As for her dad's threats against my business, bring it on. I didn't build this company from nothing just to be scared off by some pissed-off father with connections. Update 3. Holy hell, guys. Things have gone from bad to insane. Okay. So, after the rehearsal dinner showdown, Sarah's dad wasn't bluffing about coming after me. He started calling my clients. 2 of them canceled contracts the next day, citing concerns about our reliability. Then, I got calls from the bank about irregularities with my business loan. Someone was clearly pulling strings. But that was just the beginning. The day before what would have been our wedding, I was at my new apartment getting some work done when there was a pounding on the door. I checked the peephole and saw Sarah's dad standing there with her 2 uncles, both pretty big dudes who own a construction company. Open the door, Ethan. We're just here to talk, her dad called out. Yeah, right. I stayed quiet, hoping they'd think I wasn't home. That's when one of the uncles pulled out what looked like a lockpick set. These guys were actually trying to break in. I called 911 immediately. Listen, Ethan, this wedding is happening, her dad said through the door. You've embarrassed our family enough. You're going to apologize to Sarah, show up tomorrow, and we'll forget this whole incident. The police are on their way, I shouted back. That's when they started really banging on the door. You think the cops will help you? I've got friends in the department. By the time they get here, we'll be long gone, and you'll be coming with us. The door frame was starting to splinter. I ran to the bedroom, grabbed the baseball bat I keep for home defense, and barricaded myself in. They got through the front door just as I heard sirens. Sarah's dad yelled through the bedroom door, This isn't over. That business you built? It's done! You'll be lucky to mow lawns after I'm finished with you. The police finally showed up, and they scattered. 2 officers took my statement but didn't seem particularly interested. One actually asked if this was just pre-wedding jitters getting out of hand. Unbelievable. I filed another police report but didn't stick around, grabbed some clothes, and went to one of my buddies' places. Called Mike immediately, who helped me get an emergency restraining order against all 3 of them. Later that night, Sarah started texting again. My dad was just trying to help fix things. Nobody has to get hurt if you just show up tomorrow. Please, Ethan, don't make this worse. The wedding day came and went. I spent it at my buddy's house, checking the security app for my apartment they didn't come back and fielding frantic calls from the venue about where the hell the groom was. Sarah's final text that night: "You've made an enemy of the wrong family. Hope your little landscaping business was worth it." At this point, I'm legitimately worried. These people are unhinged. Mike says we have options: restraining orders against the whole family, possible criminal charges for the break-in attempt, and a cease and desist for the business interference. I'm not going to lie. The scariest part is that I'm starting to think Sarah's dad might really have connections like he claims. One of the cops who responded actually went to high school with him, and 3 more clients have dropped us in the last 48 hours. I'm not backing down, though. I built my business from nothing, and I'll rebuild it again if I have to. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared, not just for my business, but physically scared of what these people might do. I'll update when I can. Staying with different friends each night for now. Final update. It's been 6 months after everything went down with Sarah and her family, and I'm finally in a place where I can close this chapter of my life. The months after the wedding that wasn't were brutal. Sarah's dad made good on his threats. I lost about 60% of my business within 2 months. Turns out he really did have connections with most of the commercial property owners in town. Some of my crew quit when the work dried up, and I had to downsize from 3 crews to just me and 2 loyal guys. And like I expected, the police were useless about the break-in attempt. The case mysteriously lacked sufficient evidence, despite my security camera footage. Sarah's dad's high school buddy made sure of that. I ended up having to move about 80 miles away to a neighboring city and essentially restart my business. It sucked, but honestly, still better than being married to Sarah and trapped in that family. The unexpected bright spot was Emily. She stuck with me through all of it, even when I was basically starting over. "I've seen what they're capable of," she said. "I'm not letting them win." We got an apartment together in the new city, and she helped me rebuild. Her marketing background actually came in handy for the new business. Turns out her skills were legit, unlike Sarah, who just used her job as cover while planning to steal from guys. Sarah's family's harassment eventually died down when they realized I wasn't coming back. Last I heard, the weirdest part happened 3 months ago. I was at a regional landscaping conference when I ran into Sarah's dad in the hotel lobby. He was there with his construction company, looking to network. When he saw me, he came over. I was ready for another confrontation, but instead he just said, "You were right about my daughters." Turns out, after I left, Sarah and Claire's scam started unraveling. 3 more guys came forward with similar stories. Then, Sarah's dad found out they'd been embezzling from the family business for years. The final straw was discovering they'd taken out credit cards in his name. "I owe you an apology," he said, looking genuinely broken. "I should have looked at the evidence instead of threatening you." I didn't say much, just nodded and walked away. Too little, too late, man. My business is finally growing again in the new city. Emily and I are solid. We're even talking about getting married next year, though this time with a much smaller ceremony and a rock-solid prenup that we both agree on. The whole experience changed me. I'm more cautious, sure, but also more appreciative of honesty and straightforwardness. I record important conversations as a matter of course now. I check potential clients more thoroughly. But I'm not bitter, which honestly surprises me sometimes. Last month, I got a text from Sarah, "I'm sorry for everything." I was a different person then. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to say. When I think about how close I came to marrying into that family, it still gives me chills. But then I look at where I am now, building something real, both in business and with Emily, and I realize it all worked out how it was supposed to. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. In my case, what didn't kill me led me to a better life than I would have had otherwise. So I guess this is it. Thanks for riding this crazy journey with me. If there's one thing I hope someone takes from all this, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.